How low can you go? Air shows are held around the world to give spectators a chance to see cutting-edge, unusual, and historic aircraft in action. But occasionally, the pilots get caught up in the excitement of the display, and they forget about the importance of ensuring public safety. One of the most dangerous maneuvers a fighter jet can do is fly at extremely low altitudes. And during a display at a show in Argentina, a pilot decides to take his IA-63 Pampa advanced trainer perilously close to both the tarmac and the crowd. At a speed of 300 knots, which is around 345 miles per hour, he was pulling 5.3 Gs as he sped past at just a few feet above the ground. The pilot, who was probably an instructor, was clearly skilled enough to keep control of the craft and avoid the people and other obstacles. But this is reckless flying at its finest. Similar situations at other events have led to the dismissal of everyone involved, but in this case, he seems to have gotten away with it. Number 9. Near miss at 35,000 feet. When you're traveling in an aircraft, it's often a calming experience to look out of the window. You can see further across the landscape than at any other time. Or perhaps you'll see a sky full of fluffy clouds. But surely the last thing you'd expect to see is another plane flying incredibly close to your own. A passenger on an Aer Lingus flight found themselves in this frightening situation in 2019 during a journey between Dublin and Lisbon. He saw the other plane and its jet stream and immediately reached for his phone to record it. It is, of course, difficult to determine the distances involved here, but the two jets were definitely flying too close for comfort. Luckily, they both passed without incident, and when the authorities investigated, they found that no further action needed to be taken. Before we move on, be sure to subscribe to Top 5s with notifications on. Number 8. Helicopter and drone. Drones can
A video editor for all creators.
What you doing there?
be incredibly fun to fly and are valuable tools for capturing imagery and video that has never been possible before. With technological advances, they are now easier than ever to buy, but they come with a lot of restrictions on where and when you can operate them, which may at times seem like overly draconian measures. When you see videos of near misses with aircraft, however, you soon realize these rules are there for a valid reason, and if an accident were to occur, it could endanger a lot of lives. This footage was recorded by a drone that was flying off the coast of Hollywood in order to capture spectacular panoramic imagery. As it pans around, it doesn't seem like there's any nearby danger, but suddenly a helicopter appears out of nowhere and is flying directly towards the drone. It shoots past within several feet of it, and the two could have very easily collided. The incident was reported to the FAA, who confirmed that the drone operator was in the wrong. But on this occasion, they took no further action except for insisting that the drone's owner reacquainted himself with the regulations. Number 7. Plane versus SUV. The airports most of us use for flights are completely segregated pieces of land that are used solely for the landing and takeoff of aircraft. But smaller facilities that are used by fixed-wing planes will often be used by other people too, with some even having roads that pass across the flight path. Of course, this is totally fine as long as the pilots and drivers are aware of the situation and listen to instructions to avoid an incident. In 2012, things didn't entirely go to plan at a Texas airport, however, when a novice pilot was coming into land. At the exact same time, an SUV driver who later claimed to have not been aware they were driving through an airport drove into the plane's path, and with no time to react, the landing gear collided with the roof of the vehicle. Luckily, the pilot survived with only minor injuries, and it was the people inside the car that complained the most about what had happened. The airport manager pointed out the stop signs on the road that were there to prevent exactly this type of thing from happening, and laid the blame completely on the driver. Number 6. Watch out for that mountain. Pilots have a huge number of things they have to be aware of when they're flying at low altitudes, and while this is just an everyday part of the job, sometimes taking their eye off the ball for just one moment can lead to a frighteningly close call. And a stark reminder of how alert they have to be, this video shows what happened in Vancouver, British Columbia in 2019, when an RJ-85 air tanker was helping to tackle a raging fire. It flew as close to the ground as it could before releasing the red-colored fire retardant to limit the inferno's spread. The pilot, however, was so focused on hitting his mark that he overlooked the mountain ridge that lay ahead and only had a split second to pull up in time to avoid it. The dust that's kicked up around the wingtips shows just how near a miss this actually was. And after the event, the pilot admitted he had been so concerned with putting out the fire that he had flown lower than had been planned without realizing. A report was filed and he undertook extra training to prevent this from happening again. But many in the profession say this was just one of the unusual hazards that they face, especially when trying to conduct such precise missions like this one. Number 5. Barcelona El Prat Airport. In 2014, an UTAIR Boeing 767 with 260 passengers on board was making its final approach into Barcelona's El Prat Airport when an Airbus A340 from Aerolíneas Argentinas suddenly began taxiing across the runway. Luckily, it was a clear day and the 767 pilot was able to see what was happening and aborted the landing in time to avoid a collision. The plane was able to fly around and make a safe landing just a few minutes later, but it could have been very different. In the aftermath, the 767 pilot was interviewed and said there had been a catalog of errors. The captain of the Airbus had apparently ignored instructions to wait by the side of the runway, and at a key moment when it had become clear that the Airbus hadn't complied with the order, communication from air traffic control went silent. Presumably because the operator panicked and didn't know what to do. The 767 pilot was forced to take matters into his own hands and regain altitude to avoid a catastrophe. And it was only because of his quick thinking that tragedy was averted. Quite why the Argentinian pilot ignored the instruction despite acknowledging has never been revealed, but it just goes to show how alert pilots have to be, because even if someone else says they're going to do one thing, there's always the chance they'll do something completely different. Number 4. St. Martin Princess Juliana Airport. Plane enthusiasts can be seen near airports around the world, trying to get into the perfect position to see which aircraft are landing and taking off. But if you want to get up close with planes,
Wondershare Filmora is a user-friendly, easy-to-use video editing software.
there's nowhere quite like the Princess Juliana Airport on the island of San Martin in the Caribbean. With limited flat available land for a runway, this one was constructed next to the ocean, but amazingly, just at the end of the runway beyond the airport perimeter is a public beach, and it often fills up with visitors looking for their chance to get insanely close to approaching aircraft. It's become such a popular place to watch aircraft on their final approach that the bars and venues on the beach even have monitors showing the arrivals board of the airport so they know when the next jet will arrive. But with them flying lower than 100 feet above the sand, it can get rather dangerous. The jet winds stir up the sand and have been known to send people flying to the ground. And despite warnings to stay out of the flight path, there's always someone who tries to brave it. While it might seem safe and just a bit of fun, there's a serious risk here, and several people have died over the years after getting too close. Still, for the most unusual plane experience in the world, this beach is definitely the place to go. Number 3. Watch your head. Tom Richard is a stunt pilot who travels the world to put on displays for spectators, but his career was very nearly cut short in 2016 with a frightening near miss that took place on a Nevada airfield. He was taking part in the Gold Formula One event at the Reno National Championship air race, but just as he was about to take off, his engine started to sputter. He was forced to shut it down. He signaled to the race marshals that there was an issue, but the 3 planes behind him failed to receive the message. They continued along the runway, and the central one only just managed to veer out of the way in time, but its wing still collided with Richard's plane in a terrifying way, and the propeller cut 3 large chunks out of his right wing. Had the approaching plane been just a few inches in the other direction, this could have easily been a fatal incident. Luckily for all involved, that didn't prove to be the case, and Richard was flying again in a matter of days, although the plane he had been in was a total write-off. Number 2. C-17 flying through a city. Every year, the city of Brisbane in Australia celebrates an event called Riverfire, which sees a massive fireworks display and a series of other showcases throughout the day. In 2018, the Royal Australian Air Force performed a flyby with a Boeing C-17 plane, but what came next would frighten people across the city and was widely condemned as being unnecessarily stupid and dangerous. The large aircraft flew very close to the ground and towards the skyscrapers of the CBD. Witnesses were convinced it was about to strike into them, but a perfectly timed maneuver saw it fly above them just in time. There's no doubt that this was a brilliantly executed stunt that would have taken a great deal of planning to pull off. But had the pilot made one mistake, it would have undoubtedly been catastrophic. The RAAF insisted that it was perfectly safe and that there were protocols in place in case one of the pilots became incapacitated, and the pilots had practiced multiple times in a flight simulator. Many residents remained unconvinced though, and it's unlikely the Air Force will be trying anything like this again anytime soon. Number 1. Space Shuttle Flyby. Flybys are performed around the world to celebrate special events, to show off new aircraft designs, or to entertain the masses at air shows. But in 2012, residents of LA were treated to arguably the most special flyby to have ever taken place. The Space Shuttle Endeavour had completed its final mission and was being transported to its final resting place as an exhibit at the California Science Center. Rather than driving it all the way, it was taken to the city on the back of a 747, but before landing at the airport, it was taken for an aerial tour around the city and photographed alongside all of the major landmarks, such as the Golden Gate Bridge, the Hollywood sign, and the Los Angeles skyline. It was then seen making a low pass over the airport before landing for the final time. Those who were lucky enough to see it were a part of a once-in-a-lifetime event, and it reminded everyone how inspirational the space program truly is.